going to get canceled in the book community for not liking this book, cancel me. I don't give a fuck. Probably shouldn't have shown you that, but we are nothing if not honest on this channel. I have never seen a book perform sci-fi worse than this one. I would rather slide down a banister of razor blades than read this book again. This book is the sickest, most twisted, most grotesque, most disgusting thing I've ever read in my entire frickin' life. What up, my channel? Welcome back to another video. I'm Jessie E. This is Ravenclaw, and you're watching. In this video, I'm gonna be talking to you about 8 highly disappointing reads, some of which are crowd favorites. So make sure that your torches are lit. Make sure that you got your pitchfork set at the low ready. Because I came here ready to spill some tea and lose some subs. The first book on this list is 100 Days of Sunlight by Abby Emmons. This book was featured in my June TBR where I gave you guys 3 different books. I read the synopsis for each of those 3 books and I let you pick the one that you wanted me to add to my June TBR. The 3 books were Love and Lies of Roxana Ali, Aurora Rising, and 100 Days of Sunlight. You ended up choosing Love and Lies, which I read and loved in July, but because I was still really interested in 100 Days of Sunlight, I decided to pick it up and see what it was all about. This book is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I should have just listened to y'all when you didn't vote for it. 100 Days of Sunlight is a YA contemporary about a girl named Tessa, who is a well-known poetry blogger. When Tessa gets into a very serious car accident, she hits her head and loses her eyesight. Now, her doctor postulates that her eyesight will only be gone for 100 days, but when her grandparents, who she lives with, sees how absolutely miserable Tessa is, they go behind her back and they hire a boy to transcribe her poetry for her so that way she can still post to her poetry website. Now, the boy they hired is named Wes Ludovico. Wes is attractive, funny, charming, positive, and both of his legs have been amputated. Wes jumps at this opportunity to help Tessa because he personally knows what it is like to live with a disability. He also is really excited at working with somebody who doesn't know that he's an amputee. Ever since he had his legs amputated, he has only ever been seen as a person to pity, and he's tired of that, so he goes to Tessa's grandparents and asks them not to tell Tessa that he is disabled. Okay, so this was actually my first ever NetGalley arc. I was super excited about reading this book for the disability rep and to see where the story goes. One of the things I really liked is that Tessa is a Christian, and even though I don't have faith myself, I love reading about characters who do have faith. And I love that Tessa's faith was a part of her character, but it wasn't her entire life. It didn't take over the narrative. It wasn't enforced on the reader. Another thing I really loved about this book was the commentary on just wanting to be seen. When Wes first meets Tessa, he says to himself, "It's the first time in 3 years anyone has ever met me without that look of pity on their face. The first time anyone has ever looked at me and not seen me. The first time anyone has stood before me with their perfectly normal legs and complained about their own problems." Unfortunately, the book goes downhill from there. This is the first time I've ever given a book 1 star, and definitely the first time I've ever given a book 1 star that I was so highly anticipating. I should have known what I was in for when Weston first shows up at Tessa's house because Tessa does not want him there. She tells her grandparents that she doesn't want him to be a part of her writing process, it's private, she doesn't want to be around people right now, and instead of respecting her wishes, her grandparents are like, no, you're a child and we know what's best for you. And then Tessa goes to Wes himself and is like, hey, can you please leave my house? I don't want you here, I don't know who you are, I don't want you touching my computer.
Don't touch my computer.
Oh, sorry.
That's the number 1 rule, man.
Sorry.
She gets understandably incredibly angry that this fucking strange boy is in her house telling her that she needs his help. She's stubborn, she's rude, she's a Spitfire wallflower who lost her sight and now hates anyone who tries to help her. Game on. He actually says that. Wes begins the book by seeing Tessa as a challenge and a conquest. Once I realized that, I was like, you know what, maybe this will get better.
Didn't get better.
I'm about to read some really creepy, disturbing lines that upset me to my core. These lines might actually be kind of triggering, so I'm going to put a timestamp right here so that you can skip ahead if you don't want to hear dialogue that this boy is thinking to himself while looking at this blind girl. She's sitting still, rigid, and stoic on her bed, staring at nothing. Her hair is braided today, less messy. She looks so serious. I liked it better when she was screaming and crying. How funny it is to be hated by this Spitfire of a girl.
If he says Spitfire one more fucking time.
Who sits on her bed and blushes with rage and tells me to go to hell. I love it. Because female anger is a joke. Okay. She was a girl, and girls are more shaken and squeamish about stuff like this. He's talking about blood. He's talking about blood. Girls are more he's talking about...
Why would a girl see blood and collapse? Oh, girls see more blood than boys.
So I play my yellow ukulele and I watch her think. The best part is she doesn't know that I'm staring at her. Honestly, this boy belongs in jail. And how can we forget the scene where Wes and Tessa are at the bookstore and Wes goes to the bathroom and this guy comes up to Tess and starts harassing her. And so Wes comes out of the bathroom. He's got one hand wrapped around Tessa's beautiful little wrist. So then Wes grabs the dude and is like, get your hands off my girl. Like, get your hands off her because she belongs to me, not because she doesn't want to be touched. I feel like that's a very important distinction that we need to make in these situations. Then there's the scene where Wes and Tessa are sitting on a bench and he's staring at her and he decides to take a picture of her without asking her. She looked so beautiful, I couldn't help myself. And now I have the satisfaction of owning a photo of Tessa Dickinson that no one has ever seen. Fucking gross. I can't describe the amount of times that I was reading this book and the line, "and she has no idea," popped out. She's so beautiful.
And she has no idea.
I'm looking right at her.
And she has no idea.
You have no idea how freaking creepy this is. And then of course there's the scene where he tells her that she doesn't need makeup because she's so much prettier without it. I love male feminists. I mean, thank you for telling me that. I would have gone my whole life thinking I needed makeup to be pretty if it wasn't for you. Well-intending man whose opinion I never fucking asked for, who came and told me that I was beautiful without makeup. It's not like I wear makeup because it's fun to match my makeup to my outfit or because I like changing it up a little bit or that I could possibly be doing it for me and only me and not for you at all in the first place, making your opinion incredibly irrelevant, just like your existence. So by the end of the book, I was hoping that some of this really problematic rhetoric would be addressed. No. Then there's the kissing scene. The frickin' kissing scene. Then there's the scene where Wes asks Tessa if he can kiss her. It's not fair because I don't give her any time to reply. Instead, I press my lips to hers without permission. So this is what kissing is like. Kill me. Why are we romanticizing the idea of being kissed without consent? Why is there so much romantic imagery attached to non-consensual activity between boys and girls in this book? This book was written by a woman. I've got questions. I would rather slide down a banister of razor blades than read this book again. And then there were like inserts of Tessa's poetry and I couldn't. Another thing that was really weird to me was the phrase handicap was used consistently throughout the book, and I was under the impression that that's not a word that we use anymore. I don't know this for a fact, however, so I just wanted to bring it up in case this is a word that you are pretty sensitive about. And it's such a shame because this book had amazing potential to make disabled kids feel seen. But unfortunately, all of those themes got drowned out by all of the really creepy rhetoric. As Abby was writing this story, I'm wondering if she could literally smell her writing career burning. The next disappointing read I have is Internment by Samira Ahmed. Man. In this YA dystopian, 17-year-old Layla is a Muslim girl living in America where Muslims are slowly being placed in internment camps. When she and her family are taken in the middle of the night to go into an internment camp, they have to endure unspeakable horrors, and Layla knows that it is time to fight back. Let's talk about some of the things this book did well. I really loved the inclusion of poetry in this book. Layla's father is a poet, and there are so many gorgeous poems about resistance that are seamlessly worked into the narrative. 100 Days of Sunlight had a lot of poetry in it, and the poetry was not good. But the poetry in this book was absolutely beautiful, and I would love to see a book of poems from Samira Ahmed at some point. There's a lot of arguments between Layla and the elders in the story because Layla firmly believes in open, outright, bold resistance, and elders kind of believe in not stirring things up and are afraid of making things worse. And I think that's a really important conversation that happens in so many political and activist circles. And I personally liked that this conversation was in the book because it is one that I have struggled with myself, and I think it's something that there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer to. And a lot of times when we talk about politics, we talk about them in a way that's all like black and white, when there's a lot of room for grayness and nuance, and I appreciated that in that sense. The book had some nuance. Unfortunately, all the nuance flew out the window. I want to start by saying that Aisha from Chapter Aisha and Sajid from Books Are My Social Life both have really great reviews on this book, and their reviews are our own voices, so I really encourage you to seek out their channels and look at their thoughts on this book, because they can provide perspective on this book that I'm not capable of providing as somebody who is not Muslim. The villain, aka the director in the story, who is the ruler of the internment camp, is cartoonishly villainous, literally comically evil. His character has absolutely no moral ambiguity or any charisma to him whatsoever, and I find that really unfortunate because this book is social commentary on actual political figures in power in the United States who hold very Islamophobic views and are working very hard to strip Muslims of their rights in America. The thing about those officials is those people are incredibly charismatic. That's how they got elected in the first place, by making us believe that they are good people who have good American values at heart. Literally the entire book lacked any kind of this subtlety, this nuance, this moral ambiguity, and it kind of felt like Samira Ahmed didn't trust that her young readers were capable of understanding subtlety, were capable of understanding that Islamophobia is real and that the rights of Muslims are in danger, unless she made literally every political person in power evil in this book. Young people are smart, we're capable of understanding complex ideas. Also, the dialogue in this book was absolutely ridiculous. None of these kids spoke like teenagers. It felt like I was watching a Spike Lee documentary.
Metaphoric jism.
Like, these are the most woke intellectual kids I've ever read in my entire life, and I'm not saying that kids can't be woke and intellectual, but it was to a point where I was like, okay, are these teenagers or are these college students defending their dissertation? I want to end talking about this book by saying that Muslims are already facing detention and having their rights stripped in America, so this book is often referred to as like a dystopian, but in reality this is what's happening to Muslims in our country right now. This is what's happening to kids at the border right now. So when you read this book, don't think of it as something that is far-fetched, because it is slowly happening. And that's why books like this are so important, because they can provide the commentary that we need on these very important issues, and I just wish it had been executed 10,000 times better. I ended up giving this book 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then we have Girls with Sharp Sticks by Suzanne Young. Please don't make me talk about this book. I knew from the second my eyes looked at that cover that this was a book I had to read. Look how gorgeous and layered this beautiful cover is. I was so excited, especially more so when I found out that it is a YA semi-dystopian set at boarding school. I have a thing for books set in boarding schools, and I actually want to do a recommendations video about books that are set in boarding schools. This book follows Mina, who is attending an incredibly prestigious school for girls. There is only about 7 girls that were accepted into the class this year, so it is the best of the best, the prettiest, the smartest. As the girls get closer and closer to graduating, Mina realizes that something is incredibly wrong. Some sinister activity is happening at her academy. Whenever the girls mess up, they are taken into the medical room where they have to receive adjustments to their behaviors. While all of the girls have had to endure these adjustments, none of them can remember what happens behind that door. Mina sets out to unravel the mystery of what is actually happening in her school, especially after meeting a mysterious boy who tells her that things are not at all as they seem. I was really excited about this book, especially because it is classified as science fiction, and I love me my sci-fi dystopian YA novels. It seemed like there was gonna be some real feminist awesome commentary in there. Yeah, I didn't get none of that. I have never seen a book perform sci-fi worse than this one. It was pretty bad. Literally, the science came in at the end as a twist to the story. And not only was the science not at all explained, like literally not at all explained.
It's science.
It might have worked better if it hadn't been so woefully obvious what the sci-fi element was from the beginning. Like, I knew by chapter 3 what the twist was gonna be. I feel like it's really tough as a writer to balance the burden of foreshadowing versus giving your plot away. And unfortunately, Suzanne Young just gave her plot away. I think she was intending to have foreshadowing and give us some clues, but she basically was like, okay, here's what's going on. There definitely are some elements of horror and thrill to this story, so if you are a horror fan like myself, I think you'll actually really like that. But that's pretty much where my enjoyment of this book ended. Mina is very protective of the girls that she goes to school with. They're her family, they love each other, and they have a profound sisterhood about them. And I love sisterhood in books. And then at the end of the book, there's a scene where one of her sisters is killed, and I think the normal reaction is to mourn and grieve over this person that you love whose brains are like spilled out all over the floor. But instead of doing that, Mina stands over this girl's body and is looking at it and just like dissecting it with her eyes, and it was really freaking weird. I can't go into detail because it's gonna give you a spoiler, but it was really weird, and I was very disturbed that we had a death of a character that was very near and dear to our protagonist, and our protagonist basically was like,
I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
it's fine. I've only been trying to protect these girls for the entire novel, and now that one is dead, it's fine, it's no big deal. I know this book was intended to be like a feminist commentary on how girls are treated in society and expected to be pretty and perfect, to be used as objects and never to fight back. Like, I get all of that, but the execution of it was really, 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 really bad. All of the men were so one-dimensional, again, cartoonish character villains, so much so that it was obvious from chapter 1 where the story was gonna go. I feel like Saw Kill Girls did a much better job of giving us a setting where these girls were very isolated and they were dealing with men that were being very oppressive and they had to liberate themselves. I feel like Saw Kill Girls did what this book was trying to do but didn't. Although I will say both Saw Kill Girls and Girls with Sharp Sticks do feature a male protagonist who is pretty important to the story, that is intended to be an example of a healthy man who does love and support the girls and the women in his life. The one nice thing that I have to say is that the male protagonist, the love interest, the romance did not take over the narrative, and he didn't try and swoop in to save the day. Mina got to handle things her own way. It was absolutely her and her sister's story, their mission, and I think that that was really important and very, very special. I found out today that there's gonna be a sequel called Girls with Razor Hearts. So do with that what you will. I ended up giving Girls with Sharp Sticks 2 out of 5 stars. And the fourth book is Let's Talk About Love by Claire Kahn. This is another book that you guys tried to warn me about. I've heard pretty much not great things about this book, but because it features a Black asexual female main character, I really, really wanted to read it. I feel like so many of you tried to warn me about this book by telling me it just ain't it, and because I am as stubborn as a mule, I wanted to read it anyway. Alice is a freshman in college nursing a broken heart. Her girlfriend has broken up with her because Alice is asexual. Determined to never fall in love again, Alice pours herself into the things that she loves the most when she meets Takumi, who's a cuter than cute Japanese boy who has taken a very overt interest in Alice. Alice definitely has feelings for him too, but what if he wants something that she is not capable of giving? Afraid of being rejected once again for being asexual, Alice decides to just be friends with Takumi, which brings problems of its own. You guys tried to warn me. I'm gonna listen to you next time. The next time you tell me not to read a book, I'm just not gonna freaking read it. This book made me uncomfortable. Alice speaks and behaves like a 9-year-old girl. She is absolutely obsessed with things that are small and adorable and cute, and that's her personality. There's nothing wrong with that, but it reached a point in the book where it was just obsessive. Like, we get it, stuffed animals are awesome. I have stuffed animals.
Don't you tell anybody.
Her quirkiness and cutesiness was way over the top for me. On top of that, the writing both tried to tackle third and first person, so it was written in third person, and then there would be personal thoughts from Alice, and I'd be like, wait, is this a first person narrative, or is it like, what are we doing here? The writing just wasn't it for me. It felt very, very young, and it made it so difficult to be invested in the story, on top of the fact that I just didn't identify or connect with Alice at all. But I did like the things Alice had to say about her personal experience being on the ace spectrum. Although I am really, really, really excited to read Claire Kahn's newest book called If It Makes You Happy. It features a Black, plus-size, queer female character, and I am so, so excited to read this. I think that I'm gonna like it a lot better than Let's Talk About Love, because I'm trying to talk about something else. This is the part of the video where I lose literally all of my subscribers. Book number 5 that wasted my time is The Tiger at Midnight by Swati Tirdzala. In this YA fantasy inspired by Hindu mythology, Esha is the stuff of legends known as the Viper. The Viper is a legendary assassin who everybody of course believes is male and would be shocked to find that it is actually a young woman. The Viper is on a task to overthrow an immoral rule by assassinating the lead general for their cause. However, a wrench is thrown in her plans when she comes across Kunal, who is nephew to the general and a very talented soldier. Kunal has been tasked with capturing the legendary Viper and bringing his head back to the palace. I was head over heels for this book once I found out about it. I was so excited for all of the magic and the mythology, the world building, these amazing badass characters, all of the weaponry, I was so excited, and unfortunately, It was unfortunate that this book did a lot more telling than it did showing, meaning that we were simply told that Esha was the legendary Viper. We were told that Kunal was an amazing soldier, but we didn't really get to see that. Now, later in the book, we did have a lot of really great fight scenes that were really showing off both of their prowess, but I felt like the fight scenes didn't do enough to establish that Esha really was the legendary Viper. I totally believe that she was capable and dangerous and a fantastic killer, but I didn't really believe in the whole Viper legend. Also, I thought that the world building and the magic could have been explained a lot better, even though the elements of culture and the elements of magic were some of my favorite parts of the story, but that kind of just shows how much I didn't like the book, because even my favorite part of the story was one of the weaker points of the story. Also, the romance between Esha and Kunal, we didn't need that. By the end of the book, I kind of felt like the romance was taking a little bit too much space on the page, but I do love the banter and the dynamic between Esha and Kunal. Overall, I ended up giving the book 3 stars just because I loved the elements of mythology and culture so much, and there were so many things that I appreciated about Kunal and Esha's character. Kunal is a very morally gray character, and I really like that. I'm so sick and tired of having one-dimensional villains. So he's a soldier in this empire that is very oppressive and evil, and he has to decide whether or not to do the right thing, and the right thing isn't always easy to do. So I really appreciated that about his character, but unfortunately, that's kind of where the appreciation for this book ends for me. And if you've been looking for an excuse to click that unsubscribe button, here is the excuse that you've been waiting for, because number 6 on my list of books that wasted my time is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. The Poet X was one of my favorite reads for Blackathon in February, and I was really freaking excited for With the Fire on High. Amani Santiago is a normal 15-year-old Philadelphia girl when she gets pregnant unexpectedly. She chooses to keep and raise her child, which she does with her abuela. And although Imani adores her kid more than life itself, she dreams every night of becoming a chef and using her God-given talent. This book has a lot of magical realism in it because Imani is able to cook and prepare dishes that once you take a bite, cause you to relive a memory. In this book, she is going to have to choose between many things: love and individualism, career and family, herself and others. I want to take this time to talk about some of the really important themes in this book that I keep seeing people miss in their reviews. One of the things I loved about this book was the struggles of being a single mom, and how the man that you're parenting a child with sees you as this object who is not allowed to leave the house or not allowed to have interactions with other boys, but he himself can go out and party and hang out with other girls because he's a dad. And as a mom, it's your responsibility to stay inside and lose all of your autonomy and to never ever focus on anything but your kid. And so I really liked that Imani has to fight a lot in this book for her own autonomy and to fight for her ability to date and to have fun and to have a life outside of her child. That was very special and important. I also want to say that the love interest, Malachi, is probably one of my favorite love interests of all time. He is so sweet and emotionally intelligent and gentle and good and kind, and I kept holding my breath waiting for him to do something crappy, to be overly patriarchal, to be controlling, to be shady in some way, and he was just amazing. And I loved that. I loved the representation for a very romantic, gentle, dark-skinned black boy, because so often we get negative imagery surrounding black boys in books, and I was really excited to have Malachi. I also want to say that this book did a great job of explaining the importance of comida, of food in Afro-Latinx cultures. And it's not a coincidence that Imani cooks food that causes people to relive memories or go to a special place or a dark place, because food is like that for Afro-Latinx people. We use food all the time, every day, to evoke memories, to evoke emotion, to bind people together, to remind us of our family ties, to connect us to our ancestors. And I feel like that's something that gets missed about the book a lot. People just think about this as like, oh, she's a good cook. And it's like, no, her cooking is connected to her culture. It's connected to the Afro-Latinx ability to tell a story through a plate. But here's why this book wasted my time. Santiago held out so many breaths that she didn't know she was holding. I was like, she should have died of asphyxiation years ago. I tapped every time she said that she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. I let go of a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I let go of the breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The wheels landed on the tarmac. I let go of the breath I didn't know I'd been holding. And there are more times that line appeared in the book, but I could not, I can't. And it was so jarring because Elizabeth Acevedo is known for her absolutely beautiful prose, and you definitely do get that in here. There are some really gorgeous lines in this book, but That made it that much more jarring when I would read a line that was just way over the top, trying too hard, super cheesy. My hand in his, and we walk in silence behind the rest of the group. And for a single moment, I feel like the sunlight sneaking over the hill is also sneaking inside of me. There are some lines in this book that are just so cheesy, and I'm like, Elizabeth, girl, you don't have to try this hard. You are a fierce ass writer. Just let your writing speak for itself. Like, we don't have to overly metaphor the story, okay? But the biggest disappointment in this book, 2 words, biggest disappointment, Pretty Leslie. Elizabeth Acevedo is known for being a very overt, a very vocal feminist, and that her feminism is reflected in her stories. She is a champion for all girls, girls of color, girls that are curvy, girls that are poor, and I absolutely love that about her. So I was really disappointed when I realized that she was using an attractive female character to pretty much only be an antagonist and to make the protagonist look good for not being like those other girls. So throughout the book, we have a character named Pretty Leslie, and Pretty Leslie, every time she appears on the page, Elizabeth will make sure to bring up that she's flicking her hair or painting her nails or just doing something very feminine. And it's totally fine for a character that's pretty to be an antagonist in the story. That's not inherently problematic or anything. But what was frustrating about it was so bubblegum and overly sexual, and literally every time Amani saw her, she would call her Pretty Leslie in her head. There's a scene where they have to go on a trip and it's only for a week, but Leslie brings a ton of baggage with her. And Amani's like, oh, who does she think she is bringing all those bags on vacation? Let her have her bags if she wants to. That's none of your business. It's totally fine to have a pretty character who is an antagonist, but honestly, it felt like every chance that she got, Amani was subtly saying that she's better than Pretty Leslie because she doesn't wear fake nails or fake eyelashes or straighten her hair. And it was really upsetting to see Elizabeth Acevedo perpetuate the I'm not like most girls stereotype, especially because we look up to her as a feminist. Now, I had one person comment on my Instagram where I criticized this book, and she said that in Philadelphia, we give each other nicknames, and these nicknames don't necessarily mean anything, but sometimes they stick. And I'm like, no, this isn't just a nickname. Santiago is literally calling her Pretty Leslie because she's super feminine and girly and pretty. And she uses this nickname to shame Pretty Leslie for caring about her appearance. Look, feminism isn't about putting down girls that are pretty. Feminism doesn't mean that you can't wear makeup or have crushes on boys or enjoy going to the hair salon and getting your nails done. It doesn't mean anti-femininity. No matter what you look like as a woman or a gender non-conforming person, you are valid, and it's okay for you to take a lot of pride and time in your appearance, but it's also okay to not want to do that. And it felt like Imani was saying that she was a better person because she wasn't as feminine and didn't put as much time and energy into her appearance as Leslie did. And it also implied that Leslie was vain for caring about the way that she looked. So tired of this rhetoric that girls are vain for caring about what their faces look like. I think overall we should stop caring so much what other people are doing with their faces and with their hair and with their nails. Like, find something else to worry about. Worry about your cooking. Ended up giving With the Fire on High 3 out of 5 stars. And the 7th book that wasted my time is a book that I have been waiting for 13 years. Yeah, you heard me right, 13 years. And that book is none other than Carrie Mora by Thomas Harris. Now, in case this name sounds familiar, Thomas Harris is the writer of the beloved Hannibal Lecter series. I read the Hannibal series when I was probably 8 or 9. My mother was a big horror fan. We used to watch horror movies together all the time. And I know that that is way too young to be reading those books or watching those movies. But me and my mom are weirdos, and we've always been weirdos, and I'm so glad that I had a mother who fostered my love for horror. Hannibal Lecter is one of my favorite characters of all frickin' time. I did a skit on Hannibal last October. I don't even know if I still have it on my channel because it was so cringeworthy, but I will link it above in case you guys want to watch this really stupid skit that I came up with. I was really excited when I heard that Thomas Harris is finally coming out with another book because he's notoriously private, doesn't do interviews, and hasn't written anything in over a decade. Carrie Mora follows a cast of villainous characters, all trying to get half a ton of gold that lies buried underneath Pablo Escobar's old house. The current caretaker of the house is 25-year-old Carrie Mora, who is a beautiful Latinx woman that fled to Miami in order to escape her life as a child soldier. Now, currently leading the pack of evil men trying to get into that house to get the gold is none other than Hans Peter. Hans Peter Schneider is a German who suffers from this disorder that makes him completely hairless, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. He doesn't even have hair in his nostrils. And he makes his money by kidnapping and selling people to incredibly perverse and rich men who have nothing better to do with their time than to torture innocent women. Okay, so this book is the sickest, most twisted, most grotesque, most disgusting thing I've ever read in my entire frickin' life. It was so perverse and disturbing. I finished it last night and I had nightmares. And this is actually a good thing for me because I'm messed up here, okay? The things that I come up with in my own head are 10 times more disturbing than anything that I've ever seen in like a movie or anything like that. So I actually like that Thomas Harris was able to give me a book that made me feel normal. So thank you for that. Between this and Misery by Stephen King, I think this is the most unsettled that I've ever been while reading a book, and this beats Misery by far. I think it goes without saying that any kind of trigger warning that one might assign for anything is in this book. Like literally all of them. All of them. But that's not why this book disappointed me. Thomas Harris is a master of creating unsettling and disturbing serial killing characters. Nobody gets into the dark mind the way that Thomas Harris does. What really let me down about this book is that it felt like he was just re-chasing the high of The Silence of the Lambs. Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter are probably the most famous serial killer victim combination of all time, and there were some eerie similarities between Clarice and Ari. For example, both of their names start with a C, and the villain in this book, Hans Peter, his name starts with an H, just like Hannibal. So it just felt like a reimagining of Hannibal and Clarice. I also just detested the writing style. I'm used to this lavish, really gothic prose from Thomas Harris, and instead we got very hands-off, obscure, minimal descriptions of literally everything. And I think that Thomas was trying to go in a different direction with this book. Like, he knows that we love his prose so much, so he was like, instead of that, I'm gonna give you nothing. I'm gonna give you the most bare bones, minimal writing possible just to throw you off. And it felt like he was being vague and obscure just for the sake of being vague and obscure. It also has the most predictable plot I have ever read. And it was to the point where I was like, okay, there's no way it's actually gonna end as simply as it seems. So by the time I reached the last page and it actually did end the way that I had guessed, I was like, what? Waiting 13 years for this book from the master of horror kind of disappointed me, and I ended up giving it, I haven't even rated it yet. I think I'm gonna go with 2.5 out of 5 stars. I will probably give it a 3-star rating on Goodreads just because if a book gives me nightmares, I'm all for it. Number 8 on my list of books that wasted my time is Tell Me How You Really Feel by Amina May Safi. I feel like I'm going to get canceled in the book community for not liking this book. Cancel me, I don't give a fuck. It just wasn't good, y'all, and I know so many of you have loved it, and I'm glad that you love it, but it just ain't it for me. Tell Me How You Really Feel is the story of 2 girls living in California. Rachel has hated Sana ever since Sana asked her out as a prank, and has made it a point to make Sana's life as miserable as possible ever since. Rachel, who is a talented, developing movie director, is forced to cast Sana in her latest project, causing these 2 girls to finally confront their differences and their feelings for one another. This was supposed to be a really fantastic hate-to-love romance. Besides the fact of loving the cover, loving the premise, I was really, really pumped for it. But, I mean, we're here now, so look how that turned out. This is why I never get my hopes up for anything, because this is how my anticipation ends. It ends with me sweating through my shirt because I'm so freaking frustrated talking about these books. Look how much I'm sweating. Look what these books made me do. Probably shouldn't have shown you that, but we are nothing if not honest on this channel. I feel like that's why you guys are subbed to me in the first place. I received so many comments from people who say things like, you're so honest and upfront, I love that about you, because they watched one of my videos, and then when you guys start watching multiple videos and you realize how freaking nuts I am, that's the moment that you unsubscribe. I buddy read this with Sajid from Books Are My Social Life, and it was so fun to buddy read with him because we were just trashing this book in our Instagram DMs. Besides the fact that I didn't really dig the writing all that much, I will say that I really, really, really loved the way that the representation was handled in this book. Rachel is Mexican and Jewish, and I thought that that was so freaking cool because I have never seen a Jewish Mexican main character, but I didn't know that she was Jewish. And like I said earlier in this video, I love representation of religion in books. Sana has a really complex family life and it's very rich and vivid. She's very uptight. Sana's family is very well off, very uptight. They have a lot of expectations for her. And Rachel's dad is just this supporting, loving single parent who just wants Rachel to be happy. I love representation for really supportive, fantastic single dads. And I actually hated Rachel. She was the character I thought I would like the most, but overall, she described and talked to Sana in ways that I felt were so unacceptable. For example, I wish I had saved some of the quotes, but she would always compare Sana to these dead, white, beautiful celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor. And they weren't always dead. Sometimes we got Natalie Portman. I feel like Natalie Dormer was in there at one point. Rachel compares Sana to so many beautiful white female celebrities and never once to any brown girl celebrities that we have. Bollywood exists, okay? You couldn't find one beautiful Indian actress to compare Sana to. You had to compare her to blonde, blue-eyed women through the whole book and say that she was so beautiful, that she was like these blonde white girls. It just didn't sit well with me. Literally not once through the book did Rachel ever describe Sana's beauty in a way that wasn't whitewashing. You can't compare her to Priyanka Chopra. Look at her. It made me really uncomfortable, and I felt like it wasn't a really good standard to set to brown girls reading the book that the most beautiful women in society are these white female celebrities. I didn't fuck with it. The second thing I didn't really like was Rachel uses Sana's beauty as an excuse to treat her poorly. She assumes all these really negative things about Sana consistently throughout the book from beginning to end because Sana is so attractive. And again, it just felt like a demonization of girls that are attractive or girls that take a lot of pride in her appearance. Like the fact that Sana always puts her hair up in a slicked back kind of strict ponytail. Rachel uses a lot of really shaming language about how Sana dresses and takes care of herself, and I just didn't really like it at all. And I felt that even though Sana did address it a few times, because even Sana noticed this, it never changed Rachel in the way that I felt Rachel should have been changed. I felt like Sana's character really grew throughout the book and Rachel's did not. This marks the end of my bitter ranting. If you made it this far in the video, comment down below with the word ooey gooey. Mainly because I want to see how everybody spells the word ooey gooey. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel to make up for all the subscribers that I just lost by filming this video in the first place. If you liked the ranting that I did in this video, you should definitely follow me on Bookstagram because I do daily book chats, book rants, discussions, and book hauls. In addition to commenting ooey gooey, let me know below what you think of these books if you've read them yourself. Have I officially turned you off to them? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? I want to have a discussion. Come for me in the comment section if you want to. I can fight, I don't mind. And since this was a very negative video, if you want to see me gush about some reads, definitely check out my 5-star LGBTQ video that I just posted a little bit ago. Until next time, stay sharp, and I will see you probably never because you're not going to subscribe.